Hello, good to see you. Pastor Sam with a reflection for April 23rd. We are going to talk today a little bit about a new morality. I don't want to use the definite article, the new morality, but a little bit of where our culture seems to want to be heading in terms of not even labeling things right and wrong, but permissible activities and kind of the basis or the reasoning for having these. Contrasting that with where we kind of had traditional values and morals, if you've heard that phrase before, in whatever connotation it may be, and where those traditional values come from, and kind of the struggle between these two different things. Now, as I have sometimes done, and I'll kind of pop this up right away, my basis for this reflection is a book. I've done this a few times. This is The Abolition of Man. It's a book by C.S. Lewis, and it's if you buy it right now, well, I'm recording this a little ahead of time. So anyway, about $8 for a book. It's by C.S. Lewis, who, in general, I've read a few of his works so far. Screwtape Letters, Mere Christianity, The Abolition of Man. He also wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, which I have also read. In general, as an author, I think I would describe him, his books are something like the ocean. If you've ever stood out by the ocean, you can scoop, I'm going to come back to this one. There we go. You can scoop a handful of water out of the ocean, and that is well and truly the ocean. And you can kind of look at it and study it and see what it is, but there's not much there, right? So you can do that. You can wade into the ocean and go up to, your waist or your chest or whatever, and kind of look around. And yeah, that's also well and truly the ocean. There's a lot more of it around you. And then you can get in a boat or a submarine and head out clear into the middle. And well, I guess you need to be in a submarine to do this, but you can really get down into the depths of it. And yes, that's also well and truly the ocean. In all of these examples, you've been looking at the ocean. You've been looking at these books by C.S. Lewis, and you can look at first glance what he has to say and still get useful, beneficial things. You can kind of wade out a little bit farther and look, and there's some new things to see. It's still the ocean, but there's some things that maybe you didn't see when you just had your little glimpse, and then you can really get down into the thick of it, and by golly, there's some pretty remarkable things down there. So I would kind of use this analogy of the ocean to describe C.S. Lewis. Let me pop this back up. The Abolition of Man is the basis for our discussion today. If you have it on audiobook, it's free. Anyway, so what he's talking about I'm going to come back to me again. What he's talking about in The Abolition of Man. And for a little bit of context, this is from a series of lectures he gave in 1943. So this is a little bit old. He's talking about this desire for a new morality. And to give also some context in terms of the title of his book, What Are We Abolishing? The Abolition of Man. Okay, what is the thing that we are abolishing? Well, as he starts out, we're abolishing man. And he'll kind of go into that. I don't want to spoil the book. It's not a very long read. I think it's about 50 or 60 pages is all it is. So you can read it probably over the course of a week, over the course of a day, depending on what kind of reader you are. I found it to be an incredibly engaging book. So I do recommend it. As usual, when I present a book, I am recommending it. But anyway, what are we abolishing? Well, we're abolishing man is kind of the long-reaching effect of abolishing morality. I'm going to be looking down. I've got my handy little note card here to help keep me on track. We're abolishing conventional morality. And why might we want to do this? Again, more context. When I say we, I'm mostly referring to society in a mass, as a group, is we. Not we as Christians, not we as like you and I, but we as kind of the world want to abolish morality Because in some regards, conventional morality, which we'll focus on in the second half of our discussion, is a tether or a limit or upon our activities. We want to be able to. There's this, again, this is kind of the distinction between that we see in our desire to engage in sinful activities versus the boundary that God has placed upon us. We can kind of see, and that's something of the struggle between a new morality and the conventional, traditional morality. That the struggle is very similar. We on some level now we as Christians try to suppress, and God destroys this urge within us. Not anyway. I don't want to head too far off into the weeds. But we as a society have the desire to do basically whatever we want. That's kind of the new morality. If you want to do it, do it. Go do it. If that's something that seems appealing to you, off you go, have at it. If it feels good, do it. I'm sure that you've heard that phrase before. But conventional morality places boundaries upon that. Well, certain activities are okay. We can see this especially within, make sure my fingers are up here, within our sexual, how do I want to say it? Sexual activities, I suppose I'll say. Some things, now if you come from the framework of traditional morality, certain activities are permissible. A husband and wife can engage in sexual activities. That's a good thing. God wants that. But other activities are forbidden, I suppose I'll say, impermissible. And I won't get into all of those. Basically, anything else is no good if you come from traditional morality. Then engaging in society, in the marketplace. How would you like your business deals to be transacted? Would you like people to act with integrity and honesty and to tell you, or are we going to kind of have this free-for-all of just do what's best for you, and that may be cheating people, that may be using people to acquire more whatever is for yourself. How should we think about the lives of others? Is there are there boundaries upon what we can do with other people's lives, or again, is it kind of a free-for-all? And not to say that within a new morality it's always a free-for-all. There's even some limits to what we as a society say we're willing to do or not. But as we're going to kind of get into, I want to see when we're getting into that. All right. As we're going to kind of, we'll get into later, a lot of things later. These boundaries are ultimately arbitrary, and that's sort of the weakness within the new morality. Now, and what so why are we abolishing traditional morality? For one, because of that tether. We want to be able to do these things that we think are beneficial or appealing or give us pleasure, and also we want to be our own boss. We want to be our own master. We want to be in control of our own destiny. Traditional morality, and here I'm borrowing from C.S. Lewis, is something of a servitude towards what he calls the Tao. T-A-O, not Taoism, not the philosophical religious belief of Taoism, but he sort of conglomeratizes basically all of the religions, all of the historical societies as a whole have something of a common morality that actually coheres very strongly across the globe and over a span of time until very recently. We've tried to break away. But he actually, there's an appendix to his book that goes through what is the Tao, what is traditional morality, and it's those limits upon murder, it's those limits upon sexual activities, It's the limits upon what things are permissible or not. And he'll use examples from ancient Egypt, from North mythology. Wow, that was really hard for me to say. From Hinduism, from Islam, from Christianity, from Taoism, Judaism. I meant Judaism. All of these different, now these are very different religions, to be clear. They differ in many regards. And even sort of a-religious societies like ancient Egypt, like the old Norse society, very, very different, spanning different cultures, different peoples, different times, yet they still seem to have, they do have this common grounding in how do we value ourselves and our activities. Are there some things that are off limits? And he's able to answer yes. Until very recently, we've had this kind of common understanding of what's, not even air quotes, what's good and what's bad. What's good and what's bad. Flipping my note card over. That's what we as a contemporary culture want to abolish. We want to abolish a tether upon our activities, and we want to abolish our servitude toward what C.S. Lewis calls the Tao, which is this kind of collected morality seen in, again, multiple different religions. As Christians, we can see this reflected within our own, the laws that God has given, the laws that Christ has given, for what that's worth. Kind of Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, 7 things. You've heard that it was said, but I say to you. The rules and restrictions that God has placed upon us. We can see this in Christianity, but it's not just a Christian phenomena. It's spanning, again, different religions, different peoples, different times. Okay, that's what we as a society want to abolish. What are we raising? Well, that's kind of the question. What is this new morality? And there's not really an answer. What is a new morality? Well, if it's not going to be tethered, if it's not going to be built upon the Tao, what C.S. Lewis calls the Tao, and again, I'm not referring to Taoism, but this collected agreement of good and wrong, good and evil, right and wrong, then where do we place a new morality? Ultimately, it's in our feelings. It is not really a true answer, but at least where we need to start. We're going to put these upon our feelings. That's where we're going to tether the new morality. So if a certain activity is appealing and seems to be beneficial for me, a new morality says, let's do that thing. We see this within, make sure my fingers are in there, within our sexuality. If an activity seems to be good, if there is consent within that activity, have at it. We see that in things such as transgenderism. You have control over your body. If you feel a certain way, a new morality says, then go on. Go walk that way, have at it. If you feel whatever, there's lots of different things to feel out there, then that's what it is. It's kind of anchored in our feelings. But then who is the our? Who is the our in this? And the point that C.S. Lewis makes, and kind of where his book heads, without giving too much away, the our is not everybody. It's not like we've all met together at this convention center and laid out, here are the things that we are going to say are permissible, here are the other things that are still impermissible. The our, air quotes needed here, is actually a very select group of people. Now, writing in 1943, his our, that group of people, is different names, but kind of the same roles. And he gives a title to these people. He calls them the conditioners. The conditioners are those people who actually are in control. And now you might think president of the US, you might think CEO of a major corporation, you might think really influential celebrity or actor, actress, or whatever, maybe in the conditioner, but aren't necessarily the conditioners. The conditioners are those who really set the boundaries, who go do a thing, who participate in some activity, and that activity is permissible, or who kind of frown upon things that other people say or do, and so then exclude their opinion. And I'm kind of adjacent to, what did I do a reflection on? I can't remember what it was exactly. Never mind. Totally lost my train of thought on that one. C.S. Lewis has this group of folks that he calls the conditioners, who are actually our new masters. So what we've done in essence, a new morality based upon our feelings or our opinions is not really everyone's opinions. And you can see this. A new morality probably doesn't agree, I'm sure it doesn't agree perfectly with your feelings and your thoughts. But no one really consulted you. No one sent out a survey asking you to list things that should be permissible and things that are impermissible. Instead, what our feelings really are is a list of activities that the conditioners have agreed upon. And now I don't want to go too far into conspiracy theory territory. I believe there are a group of people in this conditioners category. I'm not going to try to name who those people are, but they're the influential people. When one of these conditioners says a thing or does a thing, wow, all right, other people are going to flock to that and going to go do that thing. That person is a conditioner. When they say or do or are a certain thing, people are drawn to that. It's not that we as a whole are giving consensus for this, but instead the conditioners are very much our new masters. So what we've done in essence, and this is, there's plenty of dangers in a new morality, but one of them is we've traded our servitude towards the Tao, again that collected traditional morality, for our servitude toward the conditioners. Whatever they say goes. And there's no basis whatsoever for, they might wake up one morning and have had a bad dinner the night before, and all of a sudden a new thing is good. Or a thing that was good is now bad. Right? There's absolutely no foundation whatsoever. And instead of being founded upon our feelings, see, a little while ago I said that wasn't quite true. It's not really founded upon our feelings. It's founded upon the will to power. So this group of conditioners are exerting, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's, beneficent or evil, right? Those are irrelevant to this discussion. They are exerting their will to power upon the rest of us. Their fame or infamy, their notoriety allows them this, we have given them, we have pledged our service to them. When they say an activity is good or bad, then that's how it is. They're a small group of people exerting their power upon really the entire world, is kind of where C.S. Lewis goes with this. So we've traded our allegiance to the Tao. As Christians, we've traded our allegiance and servitude towards God with servitude towards this small group of people, which again, Jesus has already warned us about, that there's basically two masters. You are either God's servant or you are Satan's servant. That's it. You serve one master or you serve the other. There is no allegiance to self. Either you serve God and follow him, and then you're grounded in this traditional morality, in the Tao, as C.S. Lewis calls it, those rules, those guidelines, those restrictions, commands that God has given. You have boundaries upon your sexual activities. You have boundaries upon, what was the second thing I did? Oh, your interactions with other people, right? Business dealings, talking about other people, having honor and integrity, especially in court. You have boundaries upon how you treat the lives of others, how you treat your own life, first of all, and then how you treat the lives of others. God has imposed boundaries upon those. So you're either in servitude towards God, or you're in servitude towards Satan, basically, is the prince of this world, to use language from the Gospel of John, the ruler of this world. Paul uses that too in one of his letters. The spirits who are at work in the sons of disobedience, that kind of thing. That if you're not in servitude towards God, you are by default in servitude towards Satan, who for what it's worth, makes it appear like you're in control. That's his great deception. And that's the deception of a new morality, that it's very much marketed or jammed down your throat as you are in charge. You control your own fate, friend. You decide what things are good or bad. When in reality, those bounds have already been placed. And you can see that if you turn on a news site. If you go onto your social media, somebody posts a thought or an opinion, and it's not, yeah, good for you, friend. I'm glad that you're sharing your thoughts with us. There's going to be some people who say that, but especially if you post something controversial, there's going to be a ton of people like, hey, why are you, throwing your opinion out there? Who are you to say whatever, right? There's not a consensus. It's not built upon your feelings. It's instead ruled by Satan. And that's really the tragedy of a new morality, where we as a world seem to be headed, whether we know it or not. But again, the great deception of Satan is that he gives you a wink and a nudge, and he says, all right, friend, where are we headed next? When he knows full well where he's leading you. He's got one of those dummy steering wheels in the car, and you're foolish enough to think that you're driving when really it's a British car and the steering wheel is on the other side, and he's leading you exactly where he knows. That's our choice between a new morality of Satan, really, and the traditional morality which has been instituted by God. And so as you're going through your daily interactions, as you're considering whether a thing is permissible or not, we're not going to anchor our thoughts in what we feel. We're not going to anchor our thoughts in what our world says is a good or a bad thing, whatever they think those mean. We're going to anchor ourselves in tradition. Those things that God has said. Those things that, for what it's worth, not just God has said, although that should be reason enough for us as Christians, but that really the majority of people, for the majority of time in the majority of our world, have agreed upon. That should carry some sort of weight, which tragically it doesn't anymore. But we're seeing a rebellion of the last, C.S. Lewis, some people stand taller and can see farther into the distance. Writing in 1943, he sounds like he gave this lecture yesterday. I mean, he so clearly pegs our situation and where we're headed that he's writing, almost 80 years ago. He saw this coming. And there are some visionaries like that who have seen farther into the distance and see where these things are headed. And so, again, let me pop this back up. The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. I recommend you get it. I've been saying that all along. It's kind of a short read. What does it say? 60 pages. And that's there's some notes in there and the appendix, like I said, at the end. I think it's well worth it. So something for you to consider, but at the very least, to continue grounding your views of good and bad in what God has declared to be good and bad. That's really what I want you to draw from this reflection. And although it can seem so appealing and enticing to be the master of your own fate, when you release allegiance towards God, you are by default pledging allegiance to Satan. So that's always that would be a bad thing to do. Please don't do that. But anyway, the issue that C.S. Lewis sees in his book, The Abolition of Man, and the issue that we are experiencing. Now, How long have I been? I've been going a fair bit. Where do we go from here? Well, that'll be a reflection for another day. But hopefully, we've never left God, so hopefully we don't have anywhere to go. You and I, we as Christians. Our world has a whole meandering path that it's going to walk down. But hopefully you and I have never left home, so to speak, that we're not wandering about lost, but we've been sitting upon the foundation of God and His Word, and that I haven't gone anywhere. And I hope that you haven't gone anywhere either. But continue sitting upon God's Word. So, our reflection for today, C.S. Lewis, Abolition of Man and a New Morality. God's peace be with you, and I'll see you next time.